What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of High Mythology, the show where we get higher than Parker Fillmore, the guy who came up with the name for today's story, and tell you guys some silly stories from mythology and folklore.
Hi.
Hi. Tonight we will be bringing you the story, and I have to say in the most stoner way, too. Like, man, I got a story for you. You want to hear the story about the enchanted peafowl? Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Wait, story of the golden apples. What about the wicked dragon and the magic horse?
Nice. Yeah, it sounds about right. I was more interested in
Like he
just the
forgot
enchanted peafowl, but
I know, like he forgot the first that he was going to tell the fourth story. Let me tell you the story of the enchanted peafowl.
it's the story.
The story of the golden apples, man.
Some wicked dragon.
That's the one about the wicked dragon and the magic horse, bro.
Even it starts out like this. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead and take it away, Kim.
Have you ever heard of the story of the peafowl who became a queen and
Hey, bro.
the Tsar's youngest son who married her?
What?
Well, here it is. That's how it starts out. I'm not even but less likable. You know what I mean? There was once a Tsar who took great delight in his garden. Every morning you could see him bending over his flowers or picking the fruit of his favorite trees. There was an apple tree that had a magic property of bearing buds, blossoms, and then golden fruit every 24 hours. It was known as the golden apple tree. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
In the morning, the first thing when he woke up, the Tsar would look out his bedroom window and see all that was well with his beloved tree. One morning, as usual, he looked out and was grieved to see that the tree had been stripped of all the golden fruit. Oh no!
What the fuck?
Which had ripened during the night. He cried,
Who has stolen my golden apple?
The palace guards looked everywhere for some trace of this thief, but nothing was found. The next morning, the same thing happened that had happened the morning after, when the Tsar looked out his bedroom window and he saw that his tree had again been stripped of his golden fruit. One A.
No! Where's the Whopper? Not my fruit!
He called to his 3 sons to him and said,
It is seemingly that the Tsar who has 3 able-bodied sons shall be robbed night after night of his golden apples. Are you willing that this should happen to you and do nothing about it?
The eldest son, who was a braggart, said,
Bruh. Say no more. I myself I'll sit up and watch tonight. When the thief comes, bruh, we'll throw hands.
So the eldest son watched that night, standing on guard under the apple tree and leaning against its trunk. As midnight approached, his eyes grew heavy and he fell asleep. While he slept, the golden apples ripened and were stolen, and the next morning, as usual, the branches were bare. The second son, who was crafty youth, laughed at his brother and said,
Ha ha ha! Tonight I will watch. I will pretend to be asleep, and when the thief appears, I will jump on him and overpower him with pure masculinity.
So when night came, the second son went on guard under the tree, and in order to deceive the thief, he lay down on the ground and closed his eyes.
Covered himself in olive oil.
At first, he stayed wide awake, but as the hours dragged by, he grew tired, and then, because he was in such a comfortable position, he too soundly fell asleep.
He's just naked and oiled up, crawling through the grass. He will think I'm a slug.
What the fuck? Midnight came, and the apples ripened. But the next morning, when the second prince awoke, the tree had been stripped of its golden fruit. The Tsar's youngest son now said,
Father, let me go on guard tonight.
His brother... Wow, that's the youngest.
I am but a child, but I shall do my bidding. and do it well.
His brothers jeered, and the Tsar shook his head and said,
Nay, nay, like the goose said. My boy, why should you succeed where your brothers have failed? It is God's will that my golden apples should be stolen, and I must just submit.
But the youngest son insisted that he too be given a chance to capture the thief, and at last the Tsar consented. The youngest prince thought to himself,
I will sleep soundly the first part of the night, and with God's help, wake up at midnight.
As soon as it was dark, he had his bed carried outdoors and placed under the apple tree. Then, after commending his undertaking to God, he laid down and fell asleep soundly to sleep. Just before midnight, he awoke, and the apples had ripened and were shining amongst the leaves like golden lanterns. On the stroke of midnight, there was a whirl of wings, and 9 beautiful peafowls came flying down from the sky.
Oh my God, so many peafowls.
8 of them settled on the branches of the apple tree and began eating the golden fruit. The 9th alighted beside the young prince, and as she touched the ground, changed into a lovely maiden.
Aww.
So beautiful. She was so beautiful and gentle that the youngest prince fell madly in love with her.
Instantly fell in love with her. Look at that girl. I've never seen one like that before. I'm in love. How do you know she's not still just a peafowl in a human's body?
Yeah.
Walking around, pecking up rocks.
You never know, it's a Shrek.
Eating grubs.
It's a Shrek twist.
Yeah.
Where was I? She was so beautiful and genteel that, that the young prince fell madly in love with her and at once began wooing her with kisses and caresses. She responded to his love, and they spent the night together in great happiness. Woo-woo.
Sounds like he Pepe Le Pewed her. He just rushed her and started giving her kisses and caresses. Oh, hello, my love.
Yep. At the first streak of dawn, she jumped up, saying,
My dear one, I must leave you now.
The prince asked,
But will you come again, won't you?
She promised him and said farewell to him. Suddenly, the prince remembered the golden apples. The peafowl in the tree were about to eat the last of them.
God damn it.
The prince begged her, saying,
Can't you make them leave just one apple for my father?
Maiden spoke to the birds, and as they flew down with 2 of the golden apples, one for the Tsar and one for the prince himself. Then the maiden lifted her arms above her head, changed into a peafowl, and with the other 8 flew off in the morning sky. The prince carried the 2 apples to his father, and the Tsar was so delighted that he forgot to ask the prince the particulars of his adventure. The next night, the prince again slept under the apple tree and woke just before midnight to hear the whirl of wings and see the 9 peafowls come flying down from the sky. 8 of them settled on the branches of the apple tree, and the 9th, as before, alighted beside him. And as she touched the earth, she changed into a lovely maiden of his heart. Again, they passed the night together in great happiness. And in the early dawn, just as before, she flew away with the other maidens and gave him the last 2 of the golden apples. This went on night after night.
He just keeps going. Don't worry, Father. I'll watch the garden. Don't bother me while I'm in the garden.
This went on night after night until the prince's 2 elder brothers were mad with jealousy and consumed with curiosity to know what happened every night under the apple tree. At last, they went to an evil woman and bribed her to spy on the young prince. They told her,
find out what happens every night under the apple tree, and, we'll reward you handsomely.
How handsomely?
I'll oil my brother up and let him crawl around in your bedroom like a slug.
Sold.
It's this new thing. I am no longer a man.
So the evil woman hid herself near the apple tree, and that night when the prince fell asleep, she crept under his bed. Midnight came, and she heard the whirl of wings, and presently she saw the white feet of a lovely maiden touch the ground as she heard the prince say,
My love, is it you?
Then, as the prince and the maiden began kissing each other and exchanging vows of love, very slowly and cautiously she reached up with her hand, and from under the bed...
She just grabbed the prince by his balls.
Maybe we're getting there. She reached her hand out from under the bed.
Just grabbed it.
And groped around until she felt the maiden's hair. Then with scissors she snipped off a lock. Creep.
With scissors she trimmed off a testicle.
The maiden cried in terror. She jumped up, lifted her arms above her head, changed into a peafowl, and without another word flew off with the other 8 and vanished into the sky.
And she shit on the prince.
In a fury, the prince searched about to see what had frightened his loved one. He found the old woman under his bed and dragged her out by the hair. He struck her dead with his sword, and good riddance it was too, for she was an evil old thing and only caused mischief in the world.
She tickled his taint with that hair she'd cut off of the maiden.
But putting the evil woman out of the way did not, alas, bring back the lovely maiden.
Alas.
The prince waited for her the next night and many following nights, but nevermore did she return.
Nevermore.
The magic apple tree, of course, was no longer robbed of its golden fruit, so the Tsar was happy once more, and never tired of praising the valor of his youngest son. But as for the prince, in spite of his father's praise, he grew sadder and sadder. Finally, he went to the Tsar and said,
Father, I have lost a maiden who I love. Life without her is not worth living. I must go out into the world and find her, or I shall die.
Wow.
But I am but a child. I must make my way in this harsh world.
I was thinking like 14, 15.
I'm 14 years old.
Just hit puberty.
I barely hit puberty. Already I'm 6'7" and have a chest full of hair.
The Tsar tried to dissuade him, but when he could not, he mounted him on a fine horse, gave him a serving man to accompany him, and set him off with his blessing.
Take this random stranger with you.
The prince and his man wandered hither and thither over the world, inquiring everywhere of news of 9 peafowls, one of whom was a lovely maiden. They came at last to a
Everyone's
lake.
just looking at him like they're crazy. Have you seen 9 peafowls, but one of them was a woman? No.
What?
Which way to hither? Hither isn't actually a town.
What about tither?
What about tither? Tither's not even a word.
They came at last to a lake on the shore, of which lived an ugly old woman with an ugly only daughter.
Jesus. Way to fucking body shame her daughter right off the bat.
I didn't mean to say that. It was just an only, and I just read it as ugly.
Okay. An ugly old woman with her only ugly daughter.
I'm sorry.
Real butter face.
She looks delicious from Valentine, but you just
You know,
that.
Sheila from the hut down by the pond. You mean ugly Sheila.
I'm so sorry. Whew. That was some good stuff that we just smoked, though. It's because ugly and only are only 4 words apart, and I read them as the same. You know what I mean?
Swear, if her eyes were any further apart, she'd be a fish.
The old woman said.
9 peafowls, and one of them is a lovely maiden. You must mean the 8 sisters and the enchanted princess who fly about here as peafowls every once in a while. They come every morning to bathe in the lake, and I definitely don't sit here and watch them. Why, what do you want with them?
The prince told the old woman that one of them was his love, and that unless he married her, he would die. The old woman scoffed and said,
Oh, yeah, you'll for sure die. There's no way for a handsome young man to talk. I'll tell you what you ought to do. You know, you ought to give up your thoughts of this peafowl princess and marry my ugly daughter over there.
You're just going to roll with it.
And I'll make you the heir to all my riches. So, you know, she might be ugly, but she is stacked when it comes to cash.
She called out her daughter, who was ugly as herself, and crossed and ill-natured in the bargain. Just one look at her, and the prince said firmly,
No, if I can't marry my own dear love, I won't marry anyone.
The old woman said
I
shortly,
am but a child. All right, then, that's okay. You do what you do you.
When the prince's back was turned, she called the serving man aside and whispered,
Hey there, honey, will you do what I tell you if I pay you well and maybe offer you a little dry hand job around the back of the building?
Well, the serving man...
It's going to be dry. I have very calloused hands.
Oh my. You better spit.
You better
The serving man, who was a mean, greedy fellow, nodded his head, and the old woman handed
I'll take
him...
a dry hand job.
And the old woman handed him a
Job.
small bellows. What's a bellows?
It's the thing that blows. I should have said blowjob. I should have said blowjob. I'll offer you a blowjob behind the building. Just go ahead and get warmed up with these bellows, and I'll be back to finish you off.
She told him.
Hide this in your shirt, and don't let your master see it. Then tomorrow morning, when you go down to the lake with him to see the 9 peafowls, slip it out and blow on the back of his neck, just ever so gently. Just do this, and I'll give you a golden ducat and a bucket and a blowjob behind the building.
The serving man took the bellows and did as the old woman directed. The next morning, down at the lake, just as the 9 peafowls came flying into sight, he crept up behind the prince and blew the bellows on the back of his neck. Instant sleep overcame the prince. He closed his eyes closed and his head drooped, and the reins fell from his hands. 8 of the peafowls alighted on the water's edge, changed into lovely maidens, and went bathing in the lake.
Nice.
But the 9th flew straight down to the prince, fluttered her wings in his face, and uttered sad cries, and tried hard to arouse him. Thank you. The 8 finished their bath.
Just pecking at his junk. It's not working in my peafowl form.
Thank you. The 8 finished their baths, changed into birds, and then called their sister, and they all flew off together. Then, and not till then, did the prince awaken. He cried,
Oh, how could I have fallen asleep just when the peafowls appeared? Where are they now? Are they gone? And did something peck me on the cock like 9 times?
His man said.
Oh, his man.
His man.
Yes, they're gone. 8 of them changed into lovely maidens and went bathing in the lake, and I totally didn't watch. But the 9 fluttered around your head and tried in every way to arouse you. She pecked you in the dick like 9 times. I also tried to arouse you, homie. You just kept on sleeping.
The prince said,
Strange. How could I have fallen asleep at such a time? I'll have to try again tomorrow morning.
The next morning, the same thing happened. The treacherous serving man again blew the bellows on the back of the prince's neck, and instantly the prince sank into a deep sleep from which the 9th peafowl was unable to arouse him. As she rose to join her sister, she said to the serving man,
When your master awakens, tell him that tomorrow is the last day. We shall come here to bathe in the lake.
The peafowls were no sooner gone than the prince rubbed his eyes, looked about, and said,
What? Where are they? Have I been asleep again?
The serving man pretended to be deeply grieved and said,
I tried hard to awaken you, master, but I couldn't. The 9th peafowl, as she flew away, said to tell you that tomorrow is the last day they'll come to the lake.
The next day the prince waited for the appearance of the 9 peafowls. He galloped madly along the shore of the lake, hoping that this way to ward off the strange sleep. But the moment the 9 peafowls appeared in the sky, he was so delighted that he threw the reins, and the treacherous serving man was able to slip up behind him and blow the magic bellows on his neck. So again he slept soundly while the 9th peafowl fluttered about his head and tried vainly to arouse him.
Okay, that's the last time, I promise.
Okay. As she was flying away...
He's gonna need an ice pack.
As she was flying away, she said to the serving man,
Tell your master that now he will never find me unless he strikes off the head from the nail.
When the prince awoke, the serving man delivered the message. The prince asked,
What can she mean?
He looked hard at the serving man, and something in the fellow's appearance made him suspect treachery. The prince took the cowardly fellow by the throat. He shook him, and then he choked him until he had gotten the truth out of him. The prince yelled at him, saying,
You know more than you are telling me. Aha! Now I understand. You are the nail of which my dear love warns me.
The fellow whined and begged for mercy, but the prince, with one blow of his sword, struck off his head.
Damn. See, he is a beefcake.
Mercy.
Glad I didn't give him a little kid voice. Just one-shot decapitating fools.
I
I
like
am
to
but a
envision
child.
it's that one dude from fucking Brave.
Yeah, it's
The
just
guy that
giant.
was the giant motherfucker that was quiet that hooks
Yeah.
up with Maudie at the end. Have you ever noticed that?
Mm.
He hooked up with the baking chick that the little fucking
Oh, of course,
boys-
he needs a baker and a
Yeah.
candlestick maker.
He needs a lot.
He needs a lot of protein. Keep a body
That
like that
woman
going.
Can make it happen.
Carry on.
I lost my spot.
I lost my spot.
I'm just looking around for it.
Got all
Did
into
she
your
fly
parade.
away?
Did she fly away?
Yes, she flew away.
Yeah. What can she mean?
You
You know more than you're telling. He just cut the head off of the
Oh, yeah. Okay.
servant dude, off of his manservant.
Thank you. I was in the middle of a sentence. I'm sorry. Okay. Then, leaving the body where it lay, where it fell, for the old woman to bury, he mounted his horse and again set forth on his quest.
Deuces.
Everywhere he went, he made inquiries about the 9 enchanted peafowls, and everywhere people shook their heads and said that they had never heard of him. What a strange man.
Tither is still not a word. This is the same village you were in before, asshole.
I do not know east from west,
Yeah,
he says.
I'm very bad at directions.
At last, high upon the wild mountain, he found an old hermit who knew all about them. He said,
Oh, you must mean the 9 princesses. A lot of history down that road. 8 of them have broken their engagement. Enchantment that held them, and are now happily married. The 9th awaits you. She is living in the royal palace of a beautiful city. It lies 3 days' journey to the north of this mountain. When you find her, tell her sometimes dead is better. If you do just so as she says, she too will be free of her enchantment. Then she'll be made a queen.
The prince thanked the hermit and rode on. After 3 days, he came to the city of which the hermit had told him. He made his way to the palace and into the princess's presence. Sure enough, the princess had her own dear love. Or, had her own. Sure enough, the princess was his own dear love.
She had her own dear. Oh, I've already moved on.
I know, right? I was like, wait, let me rephrase that. Sorry. She received him with joy, promised soon to marry him, and gave him over the keys to the palace. Just handed him
the keys to the palace.
I don't know what the point of that is. She told him.
Oh.
Oh, she's a princess now. I don't think she's so good.
You're now the master here. Go where you like and do as you please. There is but one thing you must not do. Only one place you must not go. Under the palace is 12 cellars. Here are the keys to all of them. Go into 11 of them whenever you... If you're cellar hunting, I guess.
I know, right?
If you're just going cellar to cellar, go into whichever one you want. But you must never open the door to the 12th one. If you do, misfortune will fall upon us both.
One day, while the princess was walking in the garden, the young prince thought he would go through the cellars. So, taking the keys, he unlocked the cellars one after another until he had seen all 11 of them. Then he stood before the door of the 12th, wondering why the princess had warned him not to open it. He thought to himself,
I'll open it just a little. If there's something inside that tries to get out, I will close it quickly.
So he took the 12th key, unlocked the 12th door, and peeped inside the 12th cellar. It was empty except for one huge cask that was with an open bunghole. He said,
I don't see anything in here to be afraid of.
Just then he heard a groan from inside the cask, and a voice called out, begging in whining tone.
A cup of water, brother! A cup of water! I am dying of thirst!
Now the prince thought to himself that it was a terrible thing for any living creature to be dying of thirst. So he hurried out, got a cup of water, and poured it into the open bunghole. He drank it quickly through his butthole. Instantly, one of the 3 iron hoops that bound the cask burst asunder, and the voice inside the cask cried,
Thank you, brother. Now and bring me another cup. I am still dying of thirst.
So the prince poured in a second cup, and the second iron hoop snapped apart. And when the voice still begged for more water, he poured a third cup. The third hoop broke. And the staves of the cask fell in, and a horrid dragon sprang out, about the size of Mushu.
Ha-ha, motherfuckers! I am but free now.
Before the prince could move, he had flown through the door of the 12th cellar and into the 11th cellar, and then into the 10th, the 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th.
Why are there so many cellars here?
And so out into the garden. The prince reached the garden just in time to see the monster overpower the princess. As the dragon carried her off, she cried, Oh, you fucking idiot! What have you done? The enchantment was almost broken. Then we could have been married. Had you not gone into the 12th cellar? Why do you even need a 12th cellar, you fucking cocksucker? Heartbroken at what had just happened, the prince mounted his horse and started off in pursuit of the dragon. He said,
I must do what I can to rescue my loved one, even if it costs me my life.
He rode many days until he came to the castle of the dragon.
Tell you what, no matter what he does it dramatically.
Mm-hmm. I like it. The dragon was out, and the princess received him with tears of joy. He said to her, Come.
My love, how can we escape?
No.
Oh, no.
Come.
Come.
Come, let us escape. Before the dragon returns.
I've got no come on my page.
Sorry, I guess I forgot to write that one. Sorry. I guess it's live.
Good one.
The princess sighed, shook her head, and said,
My love, how can we escape? The dragon rides a magic horse, and however fast we go, his horse will overpower us. It's quite the horse.
But the prince insisted that they make the attempt. So she mounted him, and off they went. Mounted with him, and off they went. When the dragon arrived home and found her gone, he laughed a brutal laugh and said to his horse,
I suppose that foolish prince has been here and is trying to carry her off. Shall we start after them now or wait until we've had our supper?
His horse said,
Oh, we may as well eat. We'll overtake 'em anyway.
So they both ate, and then the dragon mounted the magic horse, and in no time they had overtaken the fugitives. The dragon said to the prince,
I ought to tear you to pieces, but I won't this time because you gave me a cup of water through my butthole. However, I warn you not to try this foolishness again. This butthole is closed for business, sir.
With that, he clutched the poor weeping princess in his
And his
scaly
butthole.
arms and carried her back to the castle.
Peace out, motherfucker.
What was the prince to do now? He tried to plan some other way of rescuing the princess, but he could think of none. In spite of the dragon's threat, he went back the next day and tried the same thing again. Again the dragon overtook him and snatched back the princess. The dragon said to the prince,
I have spared you one more time, and I will spare you once more. I shouldn't be telling you that right now, but it's because of the water you gave me through my butthole. But this is my last warning. If you come again, I will fucking eat you through my butthole. It's got teeth.
Did I write that? Damn.
Yeah.
Got real high. I was focused on the bunghole.
I'm so focused on the butthole right now. It's a real focal point. Yes.
Sorry. But what man worthy that name? But what man worthy the name will accept such a warning when the safety and happiness of his beloved one is concerned? The next day, while the dragon was out, the
she's
prince
gonna lose a
again
finger.
returned to the castle. He said to the princess,
It is plain to see that we can never escape until we too get a magic horse.
We must find out where the dragon got his. Tonight, when he comes home, speak to him fair and caress his head. And when he's in a fine mood, ask him about his horse, what kind of horse it is, and where he got it. Then I will come back tomorrow around the same time, and you can tell me.
So that night, when the dragon came home, the princess allowed him to put his head on her lap, and she scratched him behind the ears and petted him until he was purring like a giant cat. The dragon purred and said,
Purr! 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 How happy we are here, just you and I. What a foolish young man that prince of yours is, to think I'd let him carry you off. Purr, purr, purr.
That is fucking weird.
Purr.
The princess agreed and said,
Yes, he is foolish, or he would never suppose his horse could outrace yours.
The dragon continued to purr and say,
Purr, purr! You're right. He seems to think my horse is ordinary. Why, I got my horse from the old witch of the mountain, and the only other horse in the world that can outride him is another horse that the old woman still has. The prince would have a hard time getting him. Purr!
The princess still scratched the dragon behind the ears, just where he loved it most, and asked softly,
Why?
Sorry. The dragon purrs and says,
Purr, 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 because the old woman will never give that horse away until a man comes along who is able to guard for 3 nights in succession the old woman's mare and foal. Anyone who attempts this and fails, she kills. But even if a man were to succeed, he would never get the right horse, for the old witch would pawn a different one to him. Purr, purr, purr. Oh, that feels good, my dear. Purr.
The princess asked,
How?
The dragon purrs and says,
Purr, purr, purr. She say, you see, she says to every man who undertakes to guard the mare, if you succeed, you may have any horse in my stable. Then she shows them 12 beautiful stallions with shiny coats. But she doesn't show them the scrawny, miserable-looking beast that lays neglected on the dung heap. Yet that is the magic horse, and brother to mine, purr.
Now the princess knew all that she needed to know, and the next day when the prince came, she told him what the dragon had said. So the prince at once sent out to find the old woman of the mountain. He traveled 3 days over waste places and through strange lands. On the first day, he was riding along the shores of the lake, and he heard a little voice cry out,
Blup, blup. Help me, brother. Help me, and who knows, someday I might help you. Might happen, could happen.
The prince looked down and saw a fish that was floundering on the sand. He dismounted to get the fish and threw it back into the water. The fish said,
Blip, blip, take one of my scales. Then if you ever need my help, just rub the scale.
So the prince, before he threw the fish into the lake, scraped off a scale and tied it to a corner of his handkerchief. Then he rode on. The second day, a fox had been caught in a trap, and it called out to him,
Oh, hey there, brother. Can you come help me real quick over here, pal?
The prince opened the trap, and the fox, before it limped away. The prince opened the trap, and the fox, before it limped away, gave the prince one of his hairs and said,
Oh, yeah, if you ever need me there, just go on and rub this hair. It's nice and soft there.
The third day, he met a raven that had fallen on a thorn and was pinned to the ground. It cried out,
Help me, brother. Help me, and who knows, someday I may help you.
Sounds a lot like the horse of the dragon.
It sounds very similar to a horse.
The prince lifted the raven off the thorn, and the raven, before it flew away, gave the prince one of its feathers, saying,
If you ever need me, just rub on this feather.
So the prince reached the house of the old woman of the mountain with the fish's scale, the fox's hair, and the raven's feather, each safely tied to a corner of his handkerchief. Now the old woman of the mountain was an ugly old witch with a long nose and a hook down and a long chin that hooked up. Weird. She crackled when she saw the prince, saying,
Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! Another one? Oh, hey there. Another one wants to service me? Well, pucker up, honey. You may know my sister. She's got a really ugly daughter, and she lives by the pond.
She's secondhand magic.
Yeah, secondhand magic and cigarette smoke.
Her daughter's going to end up like her.
Yeah. Her daughter is incredibly ugly.
I love it. Just stick with it.
Yeah.
The prince said, Yes.
Yes.
The old woman says,
Well, you know the conditions, Guard my mare in a fowl for 3 nights in succession, and you can have any horse in my stable. But I swear to God, if she fucking escapes, then your head is mine, and I'll stick it up there as a warning to the other rash young men who try to come this way.
The old woman pointed to a high picket fence that surrounded the courtyard. On every picket but one, there was a grinning human skull. The prince looked, and the only picket that had no skull cried out, I want my skull, Granny! I want my skull! The old woman gave a wicked laugh and said,
I told you so. We were totally expecting you.
When night fell, the prince led out the mare and her foal to a grassy meadow. To make sure that she would not escape him, he mounted her. Midnight came, and he must have fallen asleep, for suddenly he awoke to find himself astride on a rail with an empty bridle in his hand. In despair, he took...
She totally just bait and switched him and slip him onto the rail.
In despair, he looked in all directions. At one end of the meadows was a pond. He said to himself,
She may have gone there to drink.
At the pond, he saw a hoof print. He said to himself,
If my fish friend were here, he could tell me.
He untied the corner of his handkerchief that the fish scale, rubbed the scale gently, and at once a little voice called out from the water.
Blup, blup, what is it, brother? How can I help you?
The prince asked,
Can you tell me what has become of the old woman's mare and foal?
The fish says,
Aye, brother, that I can. She and the foal are turned into fish, and we're down here in the water hiding among us.
Bloop.
Blup, blup, blup. Strike the water 3 times with the bridle and say, Mare of the old woman, come out, you motherfucker. That'll bring him out.
The prince did this. There was a commotion in the water. A big fish and a little fish leaped high into the air and fell on shore, and instantly changed into the mare and foal. When morning came, the prince drove them back to the old woman. She grinned and pretended to be pleased. But when she had the mare alone in the stable, the prince heard her beating the poor creature and saying,
Now why didn't you do as I told you and hide among the fishes?
The mare whined and said,
Oh, I did, but the fish and his friends, they found me.
The old woman snarled and said,
Snarl. Tonight, hide among the foxes, and this time, don't you let him find you. Do you hear me? The fucking foxes.
The prince remembered this, and on the second night, when he awoke, found himself again sitting astride on the rail and holding an empty bridle in his hand. He untied the second corner of his handkerchief, took out the fox's hair, and rubbed it gently. Instantly, he heard a little bark, and the fox's voice said,
Oh, hey there, buddy. How's it going there? Can I help you with anything?
Ike.
Ike.
The prince asked,
Can you tell me what has become of the old woman's mare and foal?
The fox says,
Oh, yeah, totally can there. Yeah, that I can, you know. She and the foal, they turned themselves into foxes there, and they're grazing over yonder in the woods, hiding among the peoples and whatnot. But if you hit the earth with a bridle and say, hey, marry the old woman, come on back over here, please, and then that'll bring them on over.
The prince did this, and instantly 2 foxes, a vixen and a cub, came trotting out of the woods. And when they reached the prince, they changed back into a mare and foal. Then in the morning, the prince drove them home to the old woman. And as before, she grinned and pretended to be pleased. But when she had the mare alone in the stables, the prince heard her giving the poor creatures another beating and saying,
I seriously with you, horse. I don't even know why anymore. I mean, did you even do what I told you? I told you hide with the foxes.
The mare whined and said,
Oh, I did, but the foxes are his friends too, and they found me.
The old woman ordered,
All right, tonight go and hide with the fucking ravens, and this time don't let him find you.
The third night, the prince tried hard to stay awake, but sleep again overcame him, and when he awoke, he found himself for the third time sitting astride on the rail, holding an empty bridle in his hand. But he remembered the old woman's words, and at once opened the third corner of his handkerchief, and taking out the raven's feather, rubbed it gently. There was a flutter of wings, and the raven's hoarse voice said,
Caw. What is it, brother? How can I help you?
The prince asked,
Can you tell me what has become of the old woman's mare and foal?
The raven says,
Caw! Yeah, brother, I can. That I can. She and the foal have turned into ravens, and is perched yonder in tall fir tree, hiding among my folks. Strike the trunk of the tree 3 times with your bridle and say, Mary, the old woman, get your ass down here, and that will bring her down.
Now, word is bridle,
Brittle. Peanut brittle.
by the way.
Bridle.
I just noticed that you said that.
I
3
just said
times.
it. Yep.
I just wanted to make sure.
Brittle,
you-
bridle. Brindle.
Okay.
It was a brittle, bridle.
The prince went over to the first tree,
Brenda's brittle.
struck it 3 times with his bridle, and said,
Mare of the old woman, get your ass down here.
Instantly 2 ravens, a big one and a fledgling, fluttered to the earth and changed into a mare and a foal. So when morning came, the prince was able to drive them back to the old woman and claim his reward. The old woman was angry enough to kill him, but she pretended to be pleased, and she smiled and grinned, and she patted the prince on the back and said,
All right, you're a true hero. You have won the reward, and you're worthy of it. So now choose the finest horse out of my stables.
It's yours.
It's yours. Just take your pick.
I'll leave it on the table.
I'll leave it on the table.
I'm on the table.
I'm on the table. Yeah. What about this old mare over here, huh? She could use another ride. If you know what I'm saying.
Nah.
I'm not gonna put out my cigarette though, so don't bump it.
She drove the 12 handsome stallions out into the courtyard and urged them on to the prince, one after the other. But at each the prince shook his head and said, I am only a poor adventurer. Oh, sad.
Huh?
Sorry.
I'm only a poor adventurer.
Sorry.
And a child at that. Such horses as these are too fine for me. Rather, give me the poor mangy creature that lies yonder on the dung heap. That is the one I choose.
I'm super fucking hungry. Sorry. The old woman fell into an awful rage and shook and shattered and begged the prince not to take the horse. She said,
It would shame me if you would ride off on the poor beast, which is, it's like half dead already. So, no, you shouldn't take him, my son.
The prince said firmly.
But that is the one I'm going to take. That and none other.
He drew his sword and lifted it threateningly to continue.
Or
to
death.
It's always so dramatic.
Threateningly said to the old woman.
I have won whatever horse I choose. And now, old woman, if you do not keep your bargain, I shall strike you down with this sword, and stick your grinning skull on that empty picket.
And at that, the empty picket began to shout, I want my skull! I want my skull!
Ooh-wee.
When the old woman of the mountain saw that the prince knew what he was about, she gave up trying to deceive him and let him lead off the horse he wanted. So the prince walked away, dragging the poor mangy creature after him. When he was out of sight of the old woman's house, he turned to the horse and began rubbing it down his rough coat and patting his wobbly legs. He said,
Now, my beauty, we'll see what you're made of.
Under his hand, the mangy beast changed into a glorious animal, one of those wonder horses of the olden days that rises on the wind and gallops with the clouds. Soon his coat shone like burnished gold, and his tail and mane streamed out like flames of fire. The horse says,
Ah, my master, I have been waiting for you for many years. We shall have glorious adventures together ahead. Ha!
Then the prince mounted him, and he rose on the winds and went so swiftly that he covered in 3 minutes all the distance that it had taken the prince 3 days to go on an ordinary horse.
Ha!
Whiff!
I am
And
now
they
your
were-
trusty horse companion.
And they were there at the dragon's castle, and there was the princess running out to welcome them. The prince says, lifting the princess up onto his horse,
Now, my love, this time the dragon will never catch us.
The wonder horse rose on the wind, and off they went. When the dragon got home, he found that the princess had fled again. He said to his horse,
Shall we follow her at once, or should we eat our supper while it is still warm?
The horse says,
It's all we can do, for we will never be able to overtake them.
At that, the dragon leaped upon his horse and mounted onto the wind, started off in hot pursuit. Presently, they caught sight of the other horse carrying the prince and the princess, but try as he would, the dragon's horse could not overtake the other. The dragon beat his horse unmercifully and dug his sharp claws into the horse's tender flanks until the horse, in agony, called out to the prince's horse,
Hold, brother, hold! Let me overtake you, or this monster will kill me with his cruelty.
The prince's horse called back,
Why do you carry such a monster? Throw him from your back and be rid of him forever. We will have many great adventures.
At that, the dragon's horse
suddenly
reared, and the dragon, losing his balance, fell and was dashed to pieces on the rocks below.
I forgot I could do that.
And that was the end of that dragon. Smushed on the fucking rocks below.
Kersplat!
Then the princess wept, but her tears were tears of joy, and she knew now that the enchantment that had bound her was broken forever. Never again would she be changed into a peafowl on the whim of a wicked dragon. Never again be separated from her loved one.
She wouldn't lose another finger to his toothy butthole.
She mounted the dragon's horse, and together she and the prince returned to the beautiful city. The people came out to meet them, and when they heard of the dragon's death, a holiday was proclaimed, and amidst the music and dancing and merrymaking, the prince and the princess were married. Happy day.
Happy day!
She was made the queen of the beautiful city, and the prince was made king.
King.
They ruled long and wisely, and better than they had lived happily, for they loved each other.
They ruled for 10 years, and then one of them decided they wanted a divorce, but they didn't do that yet, so they just killed the other one.
So, now you know the story of, the peafowl who became the queen, and the Tsar's youngest son who married her, the end.
Bro, wasn't there another thing in there that they didn't even talk about?
Your mom's butthole.
Your mom's the story of the golden your mom's butthole.
We saw the chocolate starfish.
You saw the starfish. The starfish came up.
Well, taking a drive through New Jersey.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the golden apples. They were at the beginning. That story of the enchanted peafowl, the story of the golden apples, the wicked dragon, and the magic horse, by Parker Fillmore.
My reference was fairy tales.
Yeah. That was a fun one. Kind of like Koshi the Deathless.
Yeah.
Very much like it just slipped all of a sudden halfway through into nope, we're just finishing with Koshi the Deathless.
Well, yeah, it's Slavic.
It's Slavic.
It's right next to Russia, so you know they're gonna fucking.
It's Slavic, y'all.
Well, not right next to each other. Are they right next to each other? I'm bad at my geography.
I don't know.
I'm bad at geography.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. But we love you guys anyway.
Thank you for understanding I'm not a geographer.
Yeah, we're not a geographer. We're just two professional stoners.
Yep. I got better things to remember.
Read you guys silly stories. And I hope you're enjoying them. Yeah. Be sure to let us know. Let us know what you think. Subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. If you're on Apple Podcasts or anything that does reviews, drop a review for us. We want to know what you folks think. Another one is let us know if there's a story you want us to take on, because we are more than happy to take on any requests.
We're going to do an exciting one next week.
Yeah, we've got a pretty exciting one coming next week. I think it's going to be fun. Very relevant.
Is it?
Relevant.
There it goes. Kinda.
Very relevant.
It happened recently.
So be sure to tune in next week. Yeah.
Check it out.
Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.